is date 9/5/25. And will it understand that? It looks like it has. It has made a best guess effort. Is that visible to anyone? Let me do that. And I didn't even put the 2 and 0 in there, but it recognized that I was trying to input a date literal. And I'm going to maximize my window size because I'm not seeing all of the items on the ribbon that I expect. There. This drop down here that says general right now, is saying that it's assuming that B1 here is in the general data type. If I go to A1, it has recognized that this is a date data type, and so now it's going to apply date operations to that value when I try to combine it with other values. So that's probably 9/5/2025 at midnight a.m., right? If I were to force it to expand it out, because it's basically some floating point number with .0000 after the decimal point. There's no values after the decimal point, and that represents the very top of the day, midnight. And then I'm going to assume that column B is where you're storing your times, and so maybe today at 1:30 p.m. is when you decided to check on your Delta flight 1234, where it was determined to be $100 for that fare. If I look at this guy here, it hasn't quite recognized that I want this to be something other than, I don't know, some random string value. It's still general, and general means that it's still going to make its best guess. If I ever try to combine this with another date value, it's going to say, oh, well, maybe I need to translate this into a date value from general. General is like an in-between state that variables are stored, values are stored in until we either tell it what data type it should be by selecting that data type from this box. I don't want it to be a date, I want that to be a time. And it's telling me what that time, how that time will be represented in the example down below. So it's going to stay at 1:30 p.m., but now, at least now, it knows that this is a time data type. And maybe 8/25 in 2024, and it got that. What is the next one? Is the entire column is generals until I actually put in something that it recognizes as a date. And so maybe this, I want this to be at 5:30 p.m. Except let me express that in military time. So that's numbers plus 12 is the p.m. So 17:30. Will it recognize that? Not quite. Maybe it has, but let me force it. And it's telling me if I force it into time, it's going to interpret that as 5:30 p.m., which is exactly what I want. And then etc., etc. Let me do another one, 7/12, 2012. And 12 o'clock, I'm not even going to say a.m. or p.m. Is it going to figure that out on its own? I mean, I guess it has, kind of. It's assuming it's 12 p.m. It still says custom, though. I'm only going to be comfortable if everything in this column is interpreted as time. And so I'm just showing you this to show you some possible pre-processing that you want to do before it comes time to do the import process, because if Excel knows the import process of this data into Access, because if Excel knows that this is a date field, this is a time field, this is a text field, and this is an integer field, then it will import without errors into your Access table that is probably defined to be the first column is date, the next column is time, the next column is whatever. All right? And by the way, I haven't told Excel that this should be a text field, it still thinks it's that blob general format. Do we have text? We do. And here, blob general, I want that to be a number, except it's going to assume a floating point number, which I guess that works, but and I guess there's more number formats. Number, just give me an integer with 0 decimal places, please. I mean, maybe you want that to be a floating point number anyway. I think I defined it to be an integer. But yeah, I think the airfare search sites give you the fares just in terms of dollars, and they don't show you the cents or anything. So I think integer is fine. That makes sense? Okay. So I was saying, when you want to make a graph of this data eventually, you don't want the x-axis to be just the date or just the time. You want the combination of the two. And, oh, I didn't show you. This little trick is, this is, of course, a date field. And we could have it be a long date, and so it's, spells out the day of the week, and then the day of the month, and then the year. But if I change it now back to general, if I just change it back to the blob data type, now it shows me the floating point number. So whatever that date was, it's actually the floating point number 45905. And so, just to prove to you that time data types are also floating point numbers, I'm going to do that same trick here. Oh, let me make this 1:30 a.m. because something that's 1.5 hours into the day is going to be relatively close to 0, and something that's close to 11:59 p.m. at the end of the day is going to be close to like 0.9 or something. So I assume this is going to be, I don't know, 0.7 or 0.8 or something. And this guy should be 0.5 if it's right in the middle of the day, at noon. If dates are actually represented as floating point numbers. So we have an example of early, middle, and late. And back to the blob. I don't know why this one didn't change. Is it because no space? Oh, okay, maybe. Make this a time. 1:30, okay. Now Excel's caught on. Yeah, close to 0, close to 1 for the 5:30 p.m. date, and close and exactly equal to 0.5 for the noon time. And so, of course, I didn't ask you to change them back into dates, but change them back into dates for me, please. And change these back into times for me. Thank you. And so if I were graphing this data, assuming that I put data in all of the columns and not just in the first row, I would insert a new column here called date time, and I would say this value plus this value, and I'm just going to drag that down, and you're going to tell me, but Francois, that just shows the time. That's stupid. And, you're right. Oh, but now this is just showing the integer portion. Before I was showing you the decimal portion, now I'm showing you the integer portion. Isn't there a way to force Excel to show us because if I go back to the blob, it's actually going to show you integer plus a decimal in there. It's going to show you that that's a floating point number, right? It's just not showing us both sides of that thing at the same time. And I can force it to do that, but I need to go into the custom section. of the data types drop down. Is this overcomplicated? Are you hating this right now? More number formats. Give me a date that you didn't fit in the original drop down, and I want something that shows me not only dates but also time, and since I like military time, because I don't have to type in the AM PMs, that's what I'm going to select. And it's not enough room, that's why it shows me those hash marks, but now, this is what I do when I want to have date time. When I want to show a time series in an Excel graph, I create a date time row, and that's the row that I select for the x-axis, and this is the column that I'll select for the y-axis. And what the heck, let me just pretend that I'm one of the students who only started collecting data on Tuesday, and so I only have 3 values for this flight. Maybe those are the values. That's way more action than I would expect to see over the course of the week this early before that flight goes off. But can I make a graph out of this data? So click, drag, shift, click, it's not shift, it's control, click, drag, control, click, drag, okay. Insert, scatter plot, connected by lines. This looks wrong. What the heck is going on here? I thought I knew how to Excel. Oh! No, it's because I went back in time with my dates. So this here is $168 was the 7/12/2012 date at noon, and then 125 is over here, and then 100 is over. Okay, so it looks backwards to me. It's because I put the data in backwards date-wise. My data is sorted in reverse order by dates. And so it's actually this point followed by this point followed by this point. But my real point here was that my fares are in that on the y-axis, and if I look at my date axis, or my x-axis, it's got a whole bunch of dates that are all on top of each other, and then we just need to format, I didn't do this before class, but let's see. We go from 40,000 to 47,000. In steps of 1,000, let's go to steps of 5,000, say, and see if that makes the data clearer. Yeah, how about 2,000? So at least now we don't have dates printed on top of each other. But there's probably a better way to figure out the steps rather than just brute forcing my way to figuring out that 2,000 is good. I would kind of actually like my numbers to be month by month, the first of each month, say. The data that you collect is going to be over 3 months, and so how many hours is a month? That's probably the value that I would put as an integer inside that major units to figure out, how big a step should I draw. Because otherwise, these are just sort of jumping randomly by, I don't know, it looks like 5 years. What's going on here? This is 2031, 2020, 2014. Okay, so I've tried to put center my data in this thing. It's chosen its own endpoints. And so usually to make my graphs look better, I figure out, okay, what is the floating point number for my minimum date? What is it for my maximum date? And that way I fill the entire graph, and then I try to find a good value that gives me values along the x-axis that are pretty, that makes sense, right? If I'm only collecting data over 3 months, maybe months is the length of a month is a pretty good step, and that's going to be something like 30 times 24 hours in general, right? Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there just to learn you a little bit of Excel on the fly in order to plot time series. Actually, you could probably get a chatbot to tell you how to draw an Excel chart in date time on the x-axis, and it might be clearer than all the stuff that I just said. Okay. Any questions on that? I have spent way more time on this than I probably should have.
Another question. So
Yeah.
when I would check the prices, I
Yep.
wouldn't say like the actual time I would check. I would just say like Wednesday morning, Wednesday evening, like Thursday morning. Is that fine?
No. So, but this is the reason why I made the deadline 1 week. 1 week later is to catch stuff like that. I actually want dates and times because probably everyone else is going to be listing dates and times, and so if you're doing it a different way, then your data isn't going to be compatible with their data. So that's why I gave you those 10 columns. Collect those 10 columns exactly in those data types so that everybody's data can be concatenated together, right? Because if your date comes in strings and everybody else's date comes in floating point numbers, your data will be excluded from the final data set. Yeah?
So number 4 on the previous slide was
Yep.
pretty concerning because
Oh, yeah?
I just went off,
You're not meant to be concerned.
well, I went off the homework 2, like,
Yeah, okay.
description. I didn't.
Yeah, this description I wrote like 6 years ago and haven't updated since, and I've updated Google Docs since, so.
Well, I collected 7 points, but when I like asked.
For each of your 3 flights?
Yeah,
So 21 points total?
yeah.
Okay.
But, I remember like asking in class like what dates, and then you were like end of November, and then I didn't see like the dates, so I did the 20th to the 24th, and I already turned it.
Yeah, okay. This first assignment, I'm catching errors like that. But I think everybody should be searching for a round trip flight that leaves Minneapolis on November 18th, 2025. And that is in the Google Docs somewhere, I think. But it might not be in homework too, but at least it's in the overall project further down the document. That's why I put all 3 of those assignments confusingly in the same document so that you could see the context in which you were doing homework too. But your flight should depart Minneapolis on this date and return on this date. You know why? Because that's my computer science conference, and I leave on, I teach class on Monday, I leave on Tuesday, and then this is Sunday that I come back, and then I start teaching classes on Monday again. You know what I'm trying to get you guys to do? I want you guys to find me the cheapest flight to Dallas-Fort Worth.
Can't believe it.
Yeah.
We've been played.
But, so I'm expecting 4 graphs out of this. Usually, the first graph that you make out of an Excel file, it will probably have all 3 of those series in there, and then you just make 3 copies of that and delete 2 series out of each copy, and then you get these 3 here. And so, this just allows me to compare the fares to each other, but I think this early before November 18th, most of your fares will be pretty flat. I know that some of you will have some ups and downs, but over time, as we zoom out and you collect more data, you're going to see that those ups and downs are basically variations around a constant line. Right now, the prices are not changing that much, even if they do go up by $10 or down by $20 for random reasons. Any other questions? That's exactly why I'm beating this dead horse and going over the details of these homeworks and making sure, hopefully, that the details I have on the slide aren't contradicting the details that I had in the Google Doc. My biggest error is not updating these dates every 2 years when this class comes around, and that's why you should be able to trust any date that ends in 2025, because that means I've actually edited that number. All right, so turn in what you've got even if it's not exactly what I said I wanted. In your case, what I would do is if you said early morning or something, just make that like 6:30 a.m., middle of the day, just make that noon, and just get a numeric data that's pretty close to when you probably collected it. But in the future, always put the date and time that you're doing the checking. Date in one column, time in the other column. And when you make the graph later, you're going to add those two columns together and put that on the
Yeah, I was
x-axis.
gonna say, I kind of made that mistake too.
Yeah. No, it's hard to figure out actually. Putting date and time on the x-axis is surprisingly complex. Before chatbots actually started answering questions for me, it took me like a week to figure out how to do that. It was more complicated than I thought it should be. Any other questions? Yeah.
So should we have all the times that we got the data, assuming we got them all around the same time? Should you just set them all at the same time? Like, if I got this one at 11:30 and this one at 11:33 and 11:35, should I just put 11:30 for all of them?
Yeah, if you got all three times at pretty much the same time, you can just
Okay.
put at the same time.
Okay.
I just want your data to be relatively honest for when it gets combined with everybody else's data, because I don't know, maybe airfares actually are cheaper at 6 in the morning, and some of you are checking at 6 in the morning, and they're more expensive at 5 p.m. when everybody gets off work and starts searching for airfares. And so that's why I want to know exactly when you did the checking, because your data may actually expose some secrets for when this flight is expensive and when it is cheap during the day, during the same day. Because right now, if you're always checking at the same time during the day, you're never going to see something like that. If that's exactly how airlines are manipulating their prices, and I mean, they're probably doing it in a sneakier way than that. But even if they were doing it in that way, you wouldn't notice if you're always just checking after your noon class or something. So it would be nice for you to check at different times of the day, even if you're only checking once per day, just to have a scattering of points which may confirm hypotheses generated by other people's points. All right. So I'm going to skip directly to the video that I was planning to show you today. This is just a break to rest your mind. I'm not going to give you any more database stuff right now. This is just an application of databases that blew my mind the first time I watched this 10 years ago. And even now, Excel is incapable of drawing the graphs that this guy had his computer science class create for him by basically doing their own version of Excel, really, doing their own graph making project. He's Swedish. He is now dead. He died, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so sometimes he speaks English, but sometimes puts words in the wrong order. He should be comprehensible, though. Why is...
That was after having spent about 20 years together with African institutions studying hunger in Africa. So I was sort of expected to know a little about the world. And I started in our medical university, Karolinska Institute, an undergraduate course called Global Health. But when you get that opportunity, you get a little nervous. I thought, these students coming to us actually have the highest grade you can get in Swedish college system. So I thought maybe they know everything I'm going to teach them about. So I did a pre-test when they came. And one of the questions, which I learned a lot, was this one. Which country has the highest child mortality of these 5 pairs? And I put them together so that in each pair of country, one has twice the child mortality of the other. And this means that it's much bigger the difference than the uncertainty of the data. I won't put you at a test here, but it's Turkey, which is highest there, Poland, Russia, Pakistan, and South Africa. And these were the results of the Swedish students. I did it so I got a confidence interval, which was pretty narrow, and I got happy, of course. I had 1.8 right answer out of 5 possible. That means that there was a place for a professor of international health and for my course. But one late night, when I was compiling the report, I really realized my discovery. I have shown that Swedish top students know statistically significantly less about the world than the chimpanzees. Because the chimpanzee would score half right. If I gave them 2 bananas with Sri Lanka and Turkey, they would be right, half of the cases. But the students are not that. The problem for me was not ignorance, it was preconceived ideas. I did also an unethical study of the professors of the Karolinska Institute that hands out the Nobel Prize in medicine, and they are on par with the chimpanzee there. So this is where I realized that there was really a need to communicate, because the data of what's happening in the world and the child health of every country is very well aware. So we did this software which displays it like this. Every bubble here is a country. This country over here is China. And this is India. The size of the bubble is the population. And on this axis here, I put fertility rate. Because my students, what they said when they looked upon the world, and I asked them, what do you really think about the world? Huh? Well, I first discovered that the textbook was Tintin mainly. And they said the world is still we and them. And we is Western world, and them is third world. And what do you mean with Western world? I said, well, that's long life in small family, and third world is short life in large family. So this is what I could display here. I put fertility rate here, number of children per woman, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to about 8 children per woman. We have very good data since 1960 about, on the size of families in all countries. The error margin is narrow. Here I put life expectancy at birth, from 30 years in some countries up to about 70 years. And 1962, there was really a group of countries here that was industrialized countries, and they had small families and long lives. And these were the developing countries. They had large families and they had relatively short lives. Now, what has happened since 1962? We want to see the change. Are the students right? It's still 2 types of countries? Or have these developing countries got smaller families and they live here? Or have they got longer lives and live up there? Let's see. We stop the world. And this is all UN statistic that has been available. Here we go. Can you see there? It's China. They are moving against better health. They are improving there. All the green Latin American countries, they are moving towards smaller families. The yellow ones here are the Arabic countries, and they get larger families, but longer lives, but not larger families. The Africans are the green down here. They still remain here. This is India. Indonesia is moving on pretty fast. And in the 80s here, you have Bangladesh still among the African countries there. But now Bangladesh, it's a miracle that happens in the 80s. The imams start to promote family planning, and they move up into that corner. And in 90s, we have the terrible HIV epidemic that takes down the life expectancy of the African countries, and all the rest of the world moves up into the corner where we have long lives and small family, and we have a completely new world. Let me make a comparison directly between United States of America and Vietnam. 1964. America had small families and long life. Vietnam had large families and short lives. And this is what happens. The data during the war indicate that even with all the death, there was an improvement of life expectancy. By the end of the year, the family planning started in Vietnam, and they went for smaller families. And the United States up there is getting for longer life, keeping family size. And in the 80s now, they give up communist planning and they go for market economy, and it moves faster even than social life. And today we have in Vietnam the same life expectancy and the same family size here in Vietnam 2003 as in United States 1974 by the end of the war. I think we all, if we don't look in the data, we underestimate the tremendous change in Asia, which was in social change before we saw the economical change. So let's move over to another way here in which we could display the distribution in the world of the income. This is the world distribution of income of people. $1, $10, or $100 per day. There's no gap between rich and poor any longer. This is a myth. There's a little hump here. But there are people all the way. And if we look where the income ends up, the income, this is 100% of world's annual income, and the richest 20%, they take out of that about 74%, and the poorest 20%, they take about 2%. And this shows that the concept developing countries is extremely doubtful. We sort of think about aid, like these people here giving aid to these people here. But in the middle, we have most of the world population, and they have now 24% of the income. We heard it in other forms. And who are these? Where are the different countries? I can show you Africa. This is Africa. 10% of the world population, most in poverty. This is OECD, the rich country, the country club of the UN. And they are over here on this side, and quite an overlap between Africa and OECD. And this is Latin America. It has everything on this earth, from the poorest to the richest in Latin America. And on top of that, we can put East Europe, we can put East Asia, and we put South Asia. And how did it look like if we go back in time to about 1970? Then there was more of a hump. And we have most who lived in absolute poverty were Asians. The problem in the world was the poverty in Asia. And if I now let the world move forward, you will see that while population increase, there are hundreds of millions in Asia getting out of poverty, and some others get into poverty. And this is the pattern we have today. And the best projection from the World Bank is that this will happen. And we will not have a divided world. We will have most people in the middle. Of course, it's a logarithmic scale here. But our concept of economy is growth with percent. We look upon it as a possibility of percentage increase. If I change this and I take GDP per capita instead of family income, and I turn these individual data into regional data of gross domestic product, and I take the regions down here, the size of the bubble is still the population, and you have the OECD there, and you have sub-Saharan Africa there, and we take off the Arab states there, coming both from Africa and from Asia, and we put them separately, and we can expand this axis, and I can give it a new dimension here by adding the social values there, child survival. Now I have money on that axis, and I have the possibility of children to survive there. In some countries, 99.7% of children survive to 5 years of age, others only 70. And here it seems that there is a gap between OECD, Latin America, East Europe, East Asia, Arab states, South Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. The linearity is very strong between child survival and money. But let me split Sub-Saharan Africa. Health is there, and better health is up there. I can go here, and I can split Sub-Saharan Africa into its countries. And when it bursts, the size of each country bubble is the size of the population. Sierra Leone down there, Mauritius up there. Mauritius was the first country to get away with trade barriers, and they could sell their sugar, they could sell their textiles on equal terms as the people in Europe and North America. There's a huge difference between Africa, and Ghana is here in the middle. In Sierra Leone, humanitarian aid. Here in Uganda, development aid. Here, time to invest. There you can go for holiday. It's a tremendous variation within Africa, which we very often make that it's equal everything. I can split South Asia here. India is the big bubble in the middle, but huge difference between Afghanistan and Sri Lanka. And I can split Arab states. How are they? Same climate, same culture, same religion, huge difference. Even between neighbors. Yemen, civil war, United Arab Emirates money, which was quite equally and well used. Not as the myth is. And that includes all the children of the foreign workers who are in the country. Data is often better than you think. Many people say that data is bad. There's an uncertainty margin. But we can see the difference here, Cambodia, Singapore. The differences are much bigger than the weakness of the data. East Europe, Soviet economy for a long time, but they come out after 10 years very, very differently. And there is Latin America. Today we don't have to go to Cuba to find a healthy country in Latin America. Chile will have a lower child mortality than Cuba within some few years from now. And here we have high-income countries in OECD, and we get the whole pattern here of the world, which is more or less like this. And if we look at it, how it looks the world, in 1960, it starts to move, 1960. This is Mao Zedong. He brought health to China. And then he died, and then Deng Xiaoping came and brought money to China and brought them into the mainstream again. And we have seen how countries move in different directions like this. So it's sort of difficult to get an example country which shows the pattern of the world. But I would like to bring you back to about here at 1960, and I would like to compare South Korea, which is this one, with Brazil, which is this one. The label went away for me here, and I would like to compare Uganda, which is there. And I can run it forward like this. And you can see how South Korea is making a very, very fast advancement, whereas Brazil is much slower. And if we move back again here, and we put on trails on them like this, you can see again that the speed of development is very, very different. And the countries are moving more or less in the same rate as money and health. But it seems you can move much faster if you are healthy first than if you are wealthy first. And to show that, you can put on the way of United Arab Emirates. They came from here, a mineral country. They catch all the oil, they got all the money, but health cannot be bought at the supermarket. You have to invest in health, you have to get kids into schooling, you have to train health staff, you have to educate the population, and Sheikh Zayed did that in a fairly good way. And in spite of falling oil prices, he brought this country up here. So we got a much more mainstream appearance of the world, where all countries tend to use their money better than they used in the past. Now, this is more or less if you look at average data of the countries. They are like this. Now, that's dangerous to use average data because there's such a lot of difference within countries. So if I go and look here, we can see that Uganda, that today is where South Korea was 1960. If I split Uganda, there's quite a difference within Uganda. These are the quintiles of Uganda. The richest 20% of Ugandans are there, the poorest are down there. If I split South Africa, it's like this. And if I go down and look at Niger, where there was such a terrible famine lastly, it's like this. The 20% poorest of Niger is out here, and the 20% richest of South Africa is there, and yet we tend to discuss on what solutions there should be in Africa. Everything in this world exists in Africa. And you can't discuss universal access to HIV for that quintile up here with the same strategy as down here. The improvement of the world must be highly contextualized. And it's not relevant to have it on regional level. We must be much more detailed. We find that students get very excited when they can use this. And even more policymakers and the corporate sectors would like to see how the world is changing. Now, why doesn't this take place? Why are we not using the data we have? We have data in the United Nations, in the national statistical agencies, and in universities and other non-governmental organizations, because the data is hidden down in the databases. And the public is there, and the internet is there, but we have still not used it effectively. All that information we saw changing in the world does not include publicly funded statistics. There are some web pages like this, but they take some nourishment down from the databases, but people put prices on them, stupid passwords and boring statistics. And this won't work. So what is needed? We have the databases. It's not a new database you need. We have wonderful design tools, and more are added up here. So we started a non-profit venture, which we called Linking Data to Design. We call it Gapminder, from London Underground, where they warn you, mind the gap. So we thought Gapminder was appropriate. And we started to write software which could link the data like this. And it wasn't that difficult. It took some person years, and we have produced animations. You can take a data set and put it there. We are liberating UN data. Some few UN organizations, some countries accept that their databases can go out on the world. But what we really need is, of course, a search function. A search function where we can copy the data up to a searchable format and get it out in the world. And what do we hear when we go around? I've done anthropology on the main statistical units. everyone says it's impossible. This can't be done. Our information is so peculiar and detailed, so that cannot be searched as other can be searched. We cannot give the data free to the students, free to the entrepreneurs of the world. But this is what we would like to see, isn't it? The publicly funded data is down here, and we would like flowers to grow out on the net. And one of the crucial points is to make them searchable, and then people can use the different design tool to animate it there. And I have a pretty good news for you. I have a good news that the present new head of UN Statistics, he doesn't say it's impossible. He only says we can't do it. And that's a quite clever guy. Huh?
Okay, I think I'm running out of time here, so I'll stop at this point. If you do want to watch the end of that video, the link is in this PowerPoint. But I also want to show you on my Hans Rosling slide here that he gave this same talk to the people at Google, and so Google have actually built, Google engineers have actually built a system much like he was talking about that accesses those data sets that he was using, and you can actually, and then they built in JavaScript graphs that show trails of dots as you go through time. Those graphs that he was showing, those are 4-dimensional graphs, right? There's an x-axis, there's a y-axis, that's 2 dimensions. The size of the bubbles is population size, that's a 3rd axis. And then he showed changes over time. So he showed 4-dimensional graphs in 2 dimensions. That's something that Excel still can't do, even though this guy gave this talk like 10, 12 years ago. All right, I'm over time. I'm keeping you too long. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. I will see you back here on Monday.